Mark Traphagen, are you ready to fearlessly question today?
Well, we're going to find out, aren't we? But yes, I've been really looking forward to this, Joey. I think it's a great format. I love what you're doing, and I'm very, very glad to be here.
All right, no pressure. The host is looking forward to it. He's looking forward to it. I'll try not to screw this up, Mark. I will try not to let you down, and we'll see what we can do. But to take the pressure off of me to start, I'll put it in your hands, and I want you to kind of just tell us your story, your experience, kind of fearlessly questioning, taking second chances, and reinventions, be it personally or professionally or however you want to take that.
Yeah. Well, we all like to think we've done that maybe more than we really have, but I think it's been part of I'm going to say our makeup. My wife and I, we feel like our entire life has been. We just, by the way, celebrated our 37th wedding anniversary yesterday, and we married very young. I was 20. She was barely legal. She was just a few months 18. And those are, if you look statistically, marriages like that are almost certainly doomed for the divorce wagon. But here we are, 37 years later. And I think that's because we set out with a mindset. I don't know how conscious we were of this, but looking back, I think we always had a mindset of we're going to see life as an adventure. We're going to understand from the start that life is going to throw you curveballs, and there's going to be unexpected things that will happen. So don't be so surprised by that, but look for opportunities when those things happen. So we've, without telling the whole long story, we've done a lot of different things. We've taken a lot of left and right turns in our lives. Some of those have led to sort of dead ends, but even the dead ends have turned into opportunities because there's things that you learn, there's relationships that you make, et cetera, et cetera. But the big turn that led to where I am today is one I get asked about a lot because it's a little strange. Is that in my my early 50s, I suddenly left everything. I had almost a 20-year career as a teacher by that point, teaching in a lot of different kinds of schools, and I loved that. But I suddenly went to seminary, and most people would assume that when somebody goes to seminary, they're going to, that's a career path, right? It's a kind of a trade school, so you're going to become a minister, right? Well, I had no ambition whatsoever of becoming a minister. It was more that my wife and I, without getting into too much detail on this, which could be controversial, we had developed a lot of questions over the years, and we were kind of fearlessly questioning some things in our religious background. And we'd had a lot of people say, hey, the two of you are smart people. You should go to seminary. They'll answer your questions. So we finally took them up on that. We packed up everything, moved to Philadelphia, spent 5 years in the seminary. Both came out with degrees. Both got a lot of fearless questions answered, maybe not in the way we thought they'd be answered, and certainly not in the way that the seminary wanted them to be answered, but they were answered. But out of that experience, as I shared in the trailer for this, came what I'm presently doing, which I was not looking for at all. Just to tell that story briefly again for the present audience, second year at seminary, I figured out that I had to earn some money to keep going there. So I went looking for a job, and there was an opening in the campus bookstore. I got hired. The day after I was hired, the manager sat me down and said, now that I've hired you, I want to tell you the store is probably going to be shut down by the seminary because Amazon's eating our lunch. Students are not buying their books here anymore, and long story short, we're probably going to be within the year shut down. But here's why I hired you to be a deckhand on the Titanic. He said, you have a reputation as knowing something about the internet, which, by the way, just meant simply that I was a pretty avid blogger at the time. And I said, so I want you to sit down in front of this computer and figure out how to take us online. And it was throwing me into the deep end of a pool. But I took the challenge. I didn't know anything about e-commerce. I didn't know anything about online marketing. But long story short, again, I learned. And I learned by trial and error. I learned by figuring out who the people were that knew what they were doing and hooking up with them. And we built an online store. We built a community around our store. And in 2 years, we went from losing $150,000 a year to breaking even. And after that, the store started to make a profit. In fact, that end became so profitable that eventually they closed the campus store. They said, oh, no, it failed. No, but kept the online store. So today, that store exists only online. Uh, well, the bug bit, and I found my new passion. I found like this is something I can do. I'm interested in. I love learning about it. I dove in deep, and 7 years later, well, really now 9 years later from the start of that, here I am. So I guess to sum all that up, it's saying asking fearless questions in your own life, being willing to question what you're doing and say, where does that question lead next, can lead to some amazing opportunities.
There's a lot to get into there. I'll try and pick my battles and try and give out what I want. But first, congratulations on the anniversary. That's pretty impressive. Congratulations also trickling in the comments.
Thank you.
Dustin Stout and Zara are congratulating you as well. And I think the first thing I want to hit on that you kind of mentioned was the first thing really out of your mouth was you used the word "are," referring to you and your wife, as this wasn't something that you kind of did yourself. How important is that for people to understand that if you can't get the people in your immediate life on board, it's going to probably just set yourself up for a losing battle right out of the gate?
Yeah, and I don't know. I've jumped right ahead. I don't know what advice to give on that. I mean, I was lucky, fortunate, blessed, whatever you want to call it. But it's part of the reason I think that Karen and I were drawn together, is we had that kind of spirit. So, I'm not going to give marriage advice here. I'm not going to. That's a fearless question, or I don't want to tread. But I will say that in relationships in life, whether it's business partnerships, it's people you meet online, people you can run into at meetups like that. I think it's important to not just look for people who know their stuff, people who are good at what they do, as important as those things, people that have skills, but people that have the spirit, for lack of a better term, of where you want to go. You want to be hooking up in relationships with people that, and when I say that spirit of adventure, I don't mean reckless people. I don't mean people that are, sometimes we can mistake just wanderlust or people just kind of bouncing about and who can never settle on anything as being adventurous. That's kind of a maybe polite, word to put on it. What I mean are people who are willing to step out and try something new, and willing to fail along the way, learn from that, pick themselves up, and go on. I think you really want to surround yourself with those people. So, sum that up, I think it's as important to look at when you're entering into relationships or partnerships. It's important to look for that kind of spirit in the person as it is for whatever expertise or knowledge they may have.
And while everyone's kind of coming in here, we got Mark here for about another 20 minutes or so, depending upon what we can talk him into. And what I want you guys to do while we're kind of talking, put your own fearless question in the event page for Mark to answer. Use the hashtag #GetFearless, and that's going to tell me that you want to come onto the show and actually ask it to Mark face-to-face, talk to this guy one-on-one. It's one of the cool things we're trying to do. So I'm going to beg you for maybe 1 or 2 times during the show to see if we can make that happen. So get those going, and we'll see which one stands out, and we'll get you onto the show. But Mark, I'm going to just get into the whole thing right here. Just take the gloves off and really start asking the tough questions, I guess. And it took you 50 years, 50 plus years to get where you are today. What took you so long?
That's a great question. Well, that I think I can come back at that with, it's not like I was sitting around on my hands for those 50 years.
Well, that was my follow-up question, but go ahead.
Yeah, and that is, I think everything. One of the cool things to say when you kind of get to my age, you can look back, and if you're doing something now, which I have the tremendous privilege to be 57 years old and to be doing something that I love doing, and that I feel like this is what I was meant to do. But I can look back and say that almost everything that I did previous to this contributed in some way. Just as a quick example, and many people have pointed this out, I made the point of that I was in teaching for many years. Well, I feel like I'm still a teacher today. Much of what I do, it developed in me the ability to be a good public speaker, which now is a huge part of my job. I speak at conferences, and I get invited back because I guess I do a good job. A lot of what Eric Enga and I at Stone Temple Consulting believe in, as far as our content marketing, the marketing of our business, is we spend a tremendous amount of time creating content that truly we believe will help people, teach people, and then also interacting and engaging with people, especially on social media, to help them, because that helps spread our reputation. It builds a reputation for us that we know what we're talking about. Well, all that to say, so much of that came out of my teaching career. For a while in my 20s, I was in sales. There's certainly things that I learned from that are relevant to today. And I would say even my theological education at seminary has bearing, because I learned things about human nature and psychology that affect what I do today. So all that to say, it may take you, some people out there, 10, 20, 30, 40 years to find that thing that you say, like, this is it now. Now I'm plugged in. But if you're trying things all along the way, if you're questioning what you're doing and you're trying out new things, then none of that's wasted. It will all contribute to what you end up doing in the end.
And see, I think what's interesting is because you kind of, like you said, you self-admitted that you kind of fell into it. You weren't really necessarily looking for it. Did you have kind of any sort of inclination that something wasn't right? I mean, were you perfectly content with where you're at? I mean, because I think a lot of this is people they don't have the observation skills to notice when they need to search for these reinventions or look for these second chances.
That's a great question, and there were a number of junctures. Boy, I could share so many stories about that, but I'll go back to a day when I was in sales. I had stumbled into sales, as I've stumbled into a lot of things. I was actually working in a hospital pharmacy, and long story short, I had taught myself to program a computer that we bought from a salesman to do some functions for the lab there. Learned basic programming from the book, wrote a program, and it worked. Well, the salesperson was so impressed that he talked to me at the company, and next thing I knew, I was working for this company selling those computers. Over the next several years, I kind of worked my way up, and I got to a level of sales where I was working for a very large corporation. If I said the name, everybody would recognize it. I was in big road sales for them, and I just became dissatisfied because what was happening in sales at that point, and this is where I had to begin to ask the question. For a while I was in denial because I thought this was the best job I've ever had in my life. I'm a professional, I wear a suit now, I have a company car, carry a briefcase, this is so cool, I don't want to give this up. But I had to ask the question, is what I'm doing really satisfying? Because unfortunately, in the business at that time at least, it didn't matter my sales skills, it didn't matter my product knowledge. In the industry that I was in, it was all about under the table, who was giving kickbacks to whom, and it just became very frustrating. So I had to ask that hard question, and it led to me walking away from that job, which was very, very difficult to do. But I'm so glad that I did it now. So I guess that's a simple answer to that, is saying that's the kind of fearless question you need to ask yourself. You need to be willing to assess at every point, am I satisfied with this? Do I want to be doing this a year or 5 years from now?
Yeah, and because you had kind of fallen into it, one of the things that I really want to know, you had said you were just kind of you were seeking out your own curiosity basically when you kind of took this little right turn. Would you had still done it? Would you have still been driven enough to get to some sort of place that you are today? Like, were you set to find something new?
Well, who knows? That's interesting, isn't it? Because it is a set of, I think everything in our life is a combination of our own initiative, our own asking the questions, our own willing to be able to look at new things, and the opportunities that we come across. In my case, as I told the story earlier, I'm doing what I'm doing today because I went to seminary and I happened to get a job at the bookstore, and the bookstore needed an online marketer, and I became that, and the connection was there. Would that have happened otherwise? Maybe. Maybe I would have had a different opportunity where I came across that. But who knows? I think that the only lesson I can take from that, without getting too cosmic here, is that the more things you're willing to try in life, the more experiences you're willing to have, the more places that you try to go, and the more meetings you attend, the more conferences you go to, the more jobs you're willing to take, whatever, those things, that all of those are opening more doors. And somewhere in opening those doors, you may come across the thing that you really want to be doing. So I think that's all I can say about that. I don't know how to create that other than that you are, by asking these questions, by making those movements, you are creating more opportunities for something, for the universe to hit you with something.
That makes a lot of sense. And we'll let you take a break here. If the sweat's starting to build up a little bit on the forehead, we'll let you take a break. And it's time to turn the tables on everybody at home. And I want you to ask them a fearless question, something that you have always kind of wanted to ask, but you didn't know. What are they gonna think about me? Should I ask that question? Is this the right place? Now's the time to ask that question. If there's something just been dying to know for people to kind of give you feedback on, what is it?
I'm going to make it a two-part question. And it's a little bit of a cliche question. It's not original, but I think it's a question that I like to ask to people when I'm having a one-on-one conversation with them and getting to know them. And that is this. The first part of it is, what would you be doing right now if you could do anything and the pay wasn't an issue? Pay wasn't a matter, whether or not somebody would pay you to do it. If you could get paid to do anything, what would you be doing for work right now? And the second part of that question is to ask yourself, why aren't you doing it? What is identify the main obstacle to getting there, and then you open up a whole series of fearless questions you have to ask yourself about, is that really the obstacle that you think it is? How could you break that down, and how could you overcome that to get there? I think just to say that, from my own life, out of the story I've been telling, there was still a lot of jumps to be made. It wasn't just like I've had a little bit of success at that bookstore. I figured out this is something I can do, and it was just smooth sailing from there on out. It just was a clear lit path up to whatever I'm doing today. It wasn't like that at all. I had to, there was a lot of doubt along the way, even though I thought, like, oh, this is what I want to do and this is so cool. But I was thinking, like, okay, I've only been doing it for a couple of years. I only did it in one circumstance. Nobody's, the doubts come, like, nobody's going to hire me to do that. I don't have enough experience. My background's not in it. You can throw up all those walls. But I'm here today, so obviously I found a way around those walls. So that's the questions that I would ask.
And we'll obviously have an opportunity to go ahead and leave if you want to answer that from Mark. We will go ahead and obviously get some of those responses into the show here as we go. But Mark, what I learned from that is you're much more diplomatic than I am. I'm more of the hammer over the head type person. I need to take a note from you and kind of help them make it be their own idea. But definitely something I can learn from there. But Carmen has a question here before I bring it up. I'm interested to know the answer. She would like to know, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you got started?
Oh. Gosh, Carmen. Hi, Carmen. Carmen's a good friend. Everything. There's so many ways that I could answer that. I think I wish I had known more now, or known more then, about how possible it is, and how, I don't want to say easy, but how possible it is these days to build relationships with very influential people. Not everybody, you're not going to get it with everybody, but in my early days, I think I wasted a lot of time. I lost a lot of ground because there were people that would have been very beneficial for me to reach out to and ask questions and build a relationship with them, to learn from them, who I now know probably would have responded to me and would have helped me and would have had a relationship with me. But I just assumed at the time, yeah, no way, that guy's a rock star. I'm not even going to send him an email. I'm not even going to ask him a question. I think I'm past that now, and I hope people are past that with me. But that's just one thing that I would share. Let's say, that I wish I had done better or known more to do back in the early days of what I'm doing now.
That's something I have a hard time relating to, the whole, like, I'm not even going to send him an email. Like, for whatever reason, I've lost that filter. I did not come, like, built in with me. I don't know what it is, but it's interesting, though, because I hear it from even a lot of people that I talk to, like, how'd you get Mark on the show? It's like, well, I asked him, it's pretty simple. No, it's a very good point. It's just having that ability to just kind of find, I guess, maybe a little more confidence in yourself and what you're doing, maybe.
Yeah.
But we got some responses coming in here pretty fast. We'll start off on the highest note that we probably could with the answer to that question. And Amelia says that she's actually doing it, so good for her. I guess it's all downhill from here, Amelia. Everyone else has got good of an answer. So.
Yeah, it's terrible to peak early, Amelia.
Yeah. Manny St. Victor also wins the award for coolest name in the Hangout today. Said he'd be hanging out on the internet and hanging out in real life with you guys. I'm assuming that's you, Mark, not me, but just like you and everybody else here. So.
Well, now there's that lack of self-confidence, Joey.
It's a difference. It's self-deprecation for entertainment. I will do anything for a laugh.
Okay, gotcha.
So. Dustin Stout said he would be telling stories through filmmaking and digital content. Carmen again said that she would be spending time with her family.
Oh, that's great.
And let's see what Griswold has. I haven't read this one. We're going to put it up anyway, so I'm going to be reading it with you. He said, I'd be contributing living in a self-sustained community with internet access. That sounds like fun. And 2, finding the people and capital aligned with that dream. I could support Griswold on that.
That's very cool.
I like that a lot. So I think that's the perfect segue for my next question here. And this is something that I touched upon in my little kind of lead-in episode to our talk, and it was surrounding thinking outside the box. And the idea that, again, some people just are more geared to think outside the box than others, but then there are even other people who think inside the box so long that they are unable to see the box any longer. And I think that's where things become very dangerous. For everybody that is no longer seeing the box, what can you say to them?
For everybody that's no longer seeing the box?
Yeah, so like they're in this place, they can't even see the possibility.
Oh, okay. I got you. The box is there, but they're not seeing it.
Right.
Yeah. I think the title of this show is one of the main keys to that. Is developing that. If I was going to be pressed to give keys to your success in the last several years, Mark, what are they? I think the title of the show would be one is Fearlessly Questioning, and that includes questioning myself, questioning my own assumptions all the time. We have to. There's a lot of us been talking about this recently, especially on the internet, about the filter bubble that you can get into in social media, where and social media sites are pushing us in this direction. They intentionally show us more of things that we like, things we agree with, and people that we have affinity with or talk about the same topics. And without realizing it, we can get pushed into that bubble where we're not seeing anything controversial. I'll just throw out this one tip. There was a guy, and I'm going to be careful here, try to say enough that I don't identify him. But there was a guy here in Google Plus who kind of became an adversary of me on something that I teach a lot about and talk a lot about, and he was just constantly, and it frankly just got annoying because it just asking the same question over and over again, and it got annoying. And I blocked him, and then I was in a conversation with Jay Baer in a Hangout, and I asked Jay Baer, at what point do you decide that you block a critic? And he said, I never block a critic. If they're truly being critical, even if they're annoying. Now, there's a whole other discussion between a critic and a troll. But he said, that person's keeping me honest. They're making me ask the question. They're making me think it through again and again. So I could go on for a long time about this, but I guess the answer to that is you've got to be intentional about it. You've got to allow sources into your life. You've got to allow people into your life that disagree with you constructively. I'm not saying open the door to trolls, but those are the people that will keep you honest, keep you thinking. And the one more thing I'd say about that very quickly is try to be widely read. I try to break out of. I tend to get on certain sources that I recommend and that I read constantly, but I'm always looking for new places to read about my field and see new thinking that's out there, see something that I might be missing.
Does listening to podcasts count? Because I'm not much of a reader, but I need to be more of.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. There's a lot of great podcasts out there, and a lot of great content on those podcasts from a lot of different viewpoints. So, absolutely.
I try to read books marketing and business books, but man, by halfway through, I can't. They don't hold my attention. I need shorter bursts. There's probably a whole study that needs to be done there, but enough of my kind of self-confessions here. kind of getting close to wrapping up. We got a few minutes left with Mark, and I haven't seen any fearless questions in there for Mark. So I would like somebody to actually get a little fearless out there in the audience and give me something that they want to come onto the show and ask Mark about. Don't be that intimidating. He's nice. He's not biting me right now, so we can actually make this happen.
Yeah, come on, Phil. I just said that I don't block people from asking questions anymore. So you're safe. You're safe.
It's not like he's going to shut down your Google Plus account if you come on the show. I mean, he might have that power, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I use that rarely.
So kind of one of the final fearless questions that I have for you today is we're kind of talking about, just like blowing everything up and starting anew. And like we just need to go find this entirely different path. But I think there might be something even more subtle, more attainable, more immediately that we might be overlooking. And we assume like, okay, I just got to go live in the woods for 6 months, come out with a beard, and then all of a sudden in my beardliness, I know what I'm going to do. What about kind of reinventing within an existing space in your life? I mean, finding opportunities to explore those passions within where you're already living.
Yeah, and for the most part, that's what I did. I don't actually like that term, blowing things up. I've never intentionally done that, I hope. I may have done that by accident, but and there have been times when it's come out of cataclysm. Like, I got fired once, and that's certainly a blowing up that you weren't expecting. But normally, I think this needs to come out of the normal process of life. It's not when we did the trailer for this. A good friend Ammon John's question. He did a fearless question in the comments afterward, and he said, like, I don't buy this whole reinventing yourself, blowing everything up. It's come on, it's a bunch of crock. And Ammon's my favorite curmudgeon. But I said you're right. In a way, you're right, because it gives the impression that we sit down one day and we say, like, I'm going to be an online marketer. Suddenly I know it. Quit my job, do everything. I'm going to build a website, and here I go. It doesn't normally happen that way. If you listen to my whole story, it's a series of circumstances, but it's more about asking the questions along the way and being willing to take the next step. I think if you look at it as I have to blow everything up and reinvent on an instant, you're never going to do it. You're never going to make the move. But that's why I asked that question earlier about, what's the one obstacle, and is it really an obstacle? What could you do to break that obstacle down and get past it to what you want to be doing? It's those baby steps that get you to where you want to go. So I think it's a better way of thinking about it.
All right. I think that's a pretty good idea. I mean, again, blowing up, again, I have to use dramatic terms. I mean, we gotta draw an audience, Mark, so we gotta keep their attention. I mean, I see this view count going up and down. We gotta keep that thing going up. But I think Manny had this question. I don't know if he wants to come on the show and ask it, but I'm gonna have it stand in as our guest fearless question of the week. Okay. And I think it's a perfect way to wrap things up. And he says, despite all your success, what's your biggest fear that you're taking on intentionally now?
Oh, that's a great question, Manny. And it's very real. And it's this, that I've grown a reputation now where there's, many people who look to me as some kind of expert. And there's a good number of people. It's and I'm not inflating it too much. I know I'm a big fish in a small pond. It's like I'm not world famous. I'm not a celebrity. There's none of that. It's
You're internet famous, Mark. You're internet famous.
Within the world, yeah, because I'm on the show now, Joey.
Yeah.
But
check's in the mail, Mark. The check is in the mail.
We're gonna blow it up. Here's where I'm gonna blow up. But seriously, you start to get a reputation, and when you start to see people actually saying to other people online and elsewhere, oh, you need to follow Mark Traphagen, you need to talk to him, or you need to read his stuff, or nobody knows about topic X like Mark. That's very gratifying. It's very satisfying. It's also scary, because what I would say my biggest fear is, Manny, is that at some point my reputation will exceed my grasp. That there are areas that people look to me with confidence and say, like, well, whatever Mark says about that, that's what I'm going to do, and I don't really know. And I think the only answer to that is being fearless enough to be honest with yourself about it, and honest with your audience, honest with your followers. That when somebody says something that you're not really sure about, to say, I don't know. I'm going to see what I can do to find that out, but I'm not real sure. Or here's my opinion, but please understand, I'm not certain about that. And I'm open to other opinions on that. So that would be, that would be my greatest fear, that I would lose that sense at some point and, believe my own press, and, become unreliable to people. I never want to do that.
And that's, I mean, obviously, that's a problem a lot of us would love to have. So, obviously, that it's again, it's careful what you wish for, I guess, at some point. Once you actually have that, that power, that influence, it's what are you going to do with it, and how are you going to react to it. But he did, Manny kind of rephrased the question that we ask every guest here on the show, and what I asked you prior to our discussion is, what fearless question are you most afraid to ask yourself in your own life and business, and kind of how are you working to answer it? And we recorded that beforehand, and if anybody wants to get that answer from Mark, that's over at fearlesslyquestioning.com. You can go ahead and get access to that. I'm going to drop a link into the event page for you to hop on over. And there are also answers. That answer to those questions is every previous guest that we've had on the show is also in that library of answers. So it's really where the best of the best kind of we put together for everybody. So Mark, I really want to thank you for taking the time to kind of spend with us today to fearlessly question kind of the way that you go about your life and how you kind of got here. So what do you want people to do? Where can people go get more of you?
Well, I think most people here know that the best place to get anything of me is usually in Google+. I'm hanging out there all the time. Don't be afraid to, if you have a question or something that you want me to take a look at, plus mention me. I'll be honest with you, if it's something I can't do or I don't have time for, but I don't mind being asked. And that's probably the best way to reach out at me. Is right here on Google+. I'm also on Twitter and active there as at Mark Traphagen, my full name. So always glad to engage and interact with people who are thinking about the things we're talking about today.
All right. Well, thanks again, Mark. I do really appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully everybody was able to walk away from this with a little bit of something. And today you're going to start your new path of, well, not maybe reinventing yourself or whatever we want to call it that isn't going to upset on John. So we want to make sure that we keep things moving. But Mark, appreciate the time. We're going to get out of here. Thanks a lot. You guys take it easy.
Thank you, Joey. Great show.
Thanks.